Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of City Skylines. Today's episode is a little different. As you can see, we are not in Versailles today, but rather in one of the new maps that came with the Hotels and Retreats DLC. I wanted to do something different and make a video about the new DLC and content creator packs, and since I already pre-recorded a couple of episodes of Versailles in anticipation of broken mods and a couple of days of trying to fix the city, it'll probably be another week or so before we have an episode of Versailles that uses the new content. I did manage to start the city fairly quickly though, so everything has been fixed and everything is ready to go for the next episode once I get around to recording it. So let me start off by saying I am not a review YouTuber. Normally I don't do review videos, I don't do reviews for DLC or new content. I just used stuff in my city builds, but as I said, I wanted to try something different and see if you, and myself for that matter, like it. And maybe if we do, we can do some more of these types of videos in the future. Now, since I'm not a full-time YouTuber and I have to wait till the weekend before I have time to record a video, I'm obviously going to be late to the party if I'm going to review the new buildings, the new roads, the new props, because every City Skylines YouTuber would have already put out their review videos as soon as the DLC was released, and some of them even got early access so they could put out the video before the DLC was released. So if I want to do a review video, I have to find another angle that sets me apart a little. Now, most YouTubers I follow mainly focus on the new content, the buildings, the gameplay, the props, stuff like that. Some mention the new maps, others ignore them completely. Of course, there are also creators out there who specifically do map reviews, but I'm hoping I can add a different perspective. Not only is the content of this video different, the approach I used to create this video was also a little different. Where normally I just load up the game with a vague idea of what I'm going to build. With this video, I actually wrote a script. So we're going to see if I can stick to the script and show you the things in real time, or if I should record the video separately and do a voiceover later. I guess if you hear this version of the script, I managed the former. So, what is the goal of this video? First of all, this review is for one of the 5 new maps, specifically Weaving Waters. I had a quick look at them and I decided to do this one, as it would probably be the map that I would start a new city on if I had to choose one of the 5 new maps. And the goal here is to explain to you why I would choose this map, see what's good about it, and what could be better, maybe give a little bit of insight into how I would plan a city on this map, and in the end, give it a score. With that, I hope that you have an easier time deciding whether you want to play this map without you having to do this work all for yourself, or worse, find out after a couple of hours of building that the map has some negatives after all that ruin your gameplay. If you like this video, then you can show me that by clicking the like button and subscribing if you haven't already. And if I like making these videos, then I might do reviews for the other maps as well. But with that being said, let's start the review. So first of all, why Weaving Waters and not one of the other 4? Well, I had a quick look at all 5 new maps and this is the one that stood out the most to me. It looks pretty realistic at first glance, even though I don't know much about geology, but the other maps all had a big feature that I thought was not very realistic. Also, for some reason, I really like the vegetation on this map. And speaking of color, we are currently using... let's open up the menu real quick. We are currently using CO's Boreal theme as the color theme for this map, which I think is the default Boreal setting in City Skylines. I'm not sure though. I think this map is European originally, so it's a little bit lighter in vanilla. But, you know, I have so many themes and LUTs installed that I use that I don't even look at the theme of a map anymore, because I know I can make it look whatever I want if I play it anyway. So, yeah, some maps do lend themselves better for some themes than others, though. And for this map, I feel like a darker green atmosphere is best. We don't have any LUTs selected for this map in this video, but it does look good as well with my favorite Seychelles LUT. But yeah, we don't have anything selected for this video. Also, I have a couple of mods, as you can see, that remove the mist and that let me zoom out a little bit further. But that's just so we can see all the edges of the map and we can do a good and nice review. Now, normally I would prefer tropical maps with bright colors and plenty of light, but the dark green and darker atmosphere of this map really appeals to me. The vegetation of this map makes me think of Northern Europe, and I think you could probably make a pretty good looking European city on this map. So first things first, the statistics for this map. The map is called Weaving Waters, and according to the info panel before starting the map, 84% of the land is suitable for building. That percentage does seem a little bit high looking at the map itself, but there is plenty of flat or almost flat ground to build on. The base team is European, as I said. It has outside connections of all 4 types, and it has plenty of each resource. Now, looking at the map as a whole, I really like the shape of the river. It looks very natural, with plenty of space around it to build on. The hills around it and the flats alongside the river really make it feel like a river valley somewhere in Northern Europe. One thing I'm not a big fan of, though, are these sand textures. From far away, they look okay, but I don't like the color with this map theme. They look a little bit like mud, but close up, they really look awful. They don't blend with the rest of the ground texture. So there are these really ugly and repeated patterns that don't look natural at all, especially around the edges of the sand. Luckily, it's pretty easy to remove using the landscaping tools. So if we open up the landscaping tools, we select sand, take a bigger brush size, use our right mouse button, and voila, there it goes. Gone is the ugly sand. I get why they did it. It's supposed to be, you know, sandy shores, a little bit of sand deposits, maybe mud deposits alongside the river. But yeah, I just really don't like the textures of that sand. If we zoom in a little and take a look at the starting square, there is a pretty decent chunk of flat buildable land. Now, normally the first thing I do when starting a new map is opening up the 81 tile mod and unlocking all 81 squares. But I know a lot of players, even those who play with mods and even those that eventually unlock all tiles, prefer to progress through the tiles naturally, at least for the first 9 tiles I believe you get in City Skylines Vanilla. But let's take a closer look at the starting square. So next to the flat land, there's also a decent part of the river that flows through the starting square. Water flow in the river is pretty high. We can show that by opening one of these menus. I'm not sure which one. This one. No, this one. There it is. Disaster detection. Okay. So yeah, if we take a look, pretty decent water flow from one side to the other. So you have no problem putting a water pump on one end and adding a sewage outlet on the other end. Some of the other new maps with this DLC only had really small bodies of water on the starting square, and some of them didn't even have water flow, meaning you probably wouldn't be able to use a water pump and sewage outlet from the start, and you have to rely on water towers or the more expensive water treatment plants from the start. But that won't be an issue on this map though. Coming into the starting square is the traditional highway, though the intersections have improved compared to the past. We'll take a closer look at the roads and other infrastructure later. Now, if we take a look at our options for the next tile, over here, there are 2 viable options in my opinion. The tiles up and down the river don't have a lot of buildable area since the river takes up a lot of space, so they probably aren't the best to choose as your first expansion. The tile to the left has a lot of buildable area, even though the river still takes up a pretty decent chunk of the tile. I feel it would have made more sense to buy this tile as your first expansion if the highway on this side also had an intersection that connected to this tile, just like the highway on this side has an intersection that connects to your first tile. That way you'd immediately have 2 connections to and from your city from very early on, which could be a huge benefit. But now this highway bends in such a way that I think it's almost deliberately put like this, so you don't have access to it with your first expansion square, and you have to buy at least another one, a second tile, just to get access to this highway. But that leaves this 4th tile here on the right side as the best option for your first expansion. I think it's almost completely flat land. Maybe there's a little bit of hilly area over here, but if you want to grow your city quickly, this is obviously the best tile to get as your first expansion. So we already touched upon it briefly, but let's take a look at our connections, starting with the road connections. Now the connection that is going to be used the most is obviously the road connection. And if we take a look and zoom out a little bit on this map, there are two highways running more or less parallel to the river, one on each side. I imagine that you want to connect those two highways at some point, probably through the intersection and highway that leads into the start square. As I already mentioned, it would have been nice if the second highway already had an interchange built over here, preferably with a connection leading into the square next to the start square, but it won't be too much trouble to build that yourself eventually. Looking at it from a top-down view, I'd imagine that connection is going to be pretty busy. Not only with traffic going to and from your city, but also from traffic coming in on one side of the map over here, for example, and wanting to exit on another part of the map over here, for example. So that traffic would go through your city as well. The highways themselves are, of course, these standard 3-lane City Skylines highways, which I'm not a big fan of. I much prefer the 2-lane highways that are more common in the area where I live. And I like to keep the 3 lanes for on and off ramps and for really busy areas. They're also a little bit too far apart for my liking. But if I were to start a build on this map, I'd probably replace them eventually with a 2-lane highway that is closer together. Just like I'm doing in Versailles right now at the moment, actually. Another thing that you probably already noticed is there are trees on the highway. Now, the reason for that is because I have Tree Anarchy on by default. It's one of these over here, I believe. Prop Anarchy is on, Tree Anarchy is on. I have that on by default. But even if you don't have it on, the trees are still there. You just can't see them. And I don't think there should be trees underneath the roads, because even if you can't see them, they're still there and they still count towards the eventual tree count. Now there is one interchange on this map, as I already said, and I'm not sure if this is a new interchange for this DLC or if they have done these interchanges before, but they are a definite improvement over the old interchanges that used to be on this map. Not on this map, on these maps, on the maps that came with the game. We still have that one as an option in the pre-built menu, I believe. So we can compare it real quick. Yeah, this one. This was the one that normally led into the starting square. So if we compare it, the new one is much bigger, much more streamlined, much less elevation difference. So looks pretty decent, although it could be better. It's not like one of those interchanges that you can download from the workshop, but yeah, it's very much usable and something that I could probably live with for the first phase of my city build. I do wish, though, that they would use lane mathematics. Even if it's just to go down one lane when there is an off-ramp and then go back a lane when there is an off-ramp, even though that is not the right way to do lane mathematics. The right way to do lane mathematics is to add an off-ramp, extra lane before an off-ramp, and add a merging lane after an on-ramp. So the highway doesn't go from always 3 to suddenly 2 and then back to 3. No, the highway goes from, ideally from 2 to temporarily 3, so you get an off-ramp, back to 2 like it has been the whole time, temporarily 3 with a merging lane, and back to 2 like it has been the whole time. Probably wouldn't take a whole lot of time for them to do that. Especially if you use node controller and road markings, you could probably improve this interchange, I would say tenfold in a matter of minutes, just by doing some lane mathematics and some node controller. If you take a look at this connection here, for example, this is two 1-lane highways coming together and they immediately go into a 3-lane highway. Those two 1 lanes are the off-ramps of each side of the highway. Which is another reason to use 2-lane highways, because if you have 2 lanes coming together, you know, it goes into 2 lanes instead of 3. So let me just real quickly try to improve this over here, right? Let's see, we do need to buy a few squares if we want to build over here. Excellent. Then first thing we can do is we can remove some of the trees on the highway, because there shouldn't be any trees on the highway. And if we then take a look at our highway menu, we have a couple of 2-lane roads, but let's just use any for the sake of this example. Then we take Well, first of all, I think we're gonna need to move it. And then make this a little bit more even. So if you take an imaginary line from this 2-lane highway and get it all the way down through the middle, it ends up in the middle between these two highways. Also, this highway should probably be on the ground for the last part. Well, let's do that real quick. We don't care about this really for now. I just want to demonstrate how you could improve this one without that much effort. So don't look at this part for now. Just look at this over here. So that is move it just to give it some better shape, you know. And if you have some time, you could, you know, shape this as well. Make sure it's a nice smooth curve, stuff like this, you know. Make it nice and smooth, but that's not part of this. Then we take node controller. First thing we do is we straighten up the edges. Then we make sure that these are in line with each other. Excellent. Now we take the intersection marking tool, click on the node, real quickly draw in some markings. Are they connected correctly? Okay, then we add a little filler. Let's use some chevrons. And then finally we can take our traffic manager, make sure cars don't drive over the chevron. There. How's that? That was like, what, 2 minutes of work? And this looks 10 times better than this, doesn't it? I mean, this is how an intersection would look in real life. This is how an intersection looks in Cities Skylines. Now, you probably want to spend a little bit more time on it. Probably move the merge. You probably want to move this node over here to the left, almost like over here, I think, instead of keeping it over here, because you need enough room for this part of the highway to come down back to ground level. But the point is that with minimal effort, this could look so much better. And the devs or the artist or whoever creates these maps, they must spend so much time on them, looking at the landscaping and looking at this river. This looks like a natural river. They must spend so much time on it. It's really a shame they don't spend more time on these road connections. The second connection we need to take a look at is the rail connection. Now, rail takes an interesting route through this map, especially compared to some of the other connections, which we'll see more about later. The railroad comes in about here at the left of the map. Then it dips all the way down through here with a little squiggly line over here to the mandatory abandoned factory, which is also on this map. Then it goes over the river, has a little intersection over here, and leaves the map on the bottom next to the highway. And then we have this little pin off that goes towards the start square. That means that all the rail connections for your city are on this side of the map, with only the one connection point over here. If I were playing this map with 81 tile mod, I would probably branch off over here somewhere and bring the rail up over here alongside the highway, and then maybe do a loop connecting it back down here. But that does require a lot of tiles if you're not playing with the 81 tile mod or the 25 tile mod. So you have to buy a lot of tiles just for the rail, which could cause other issues with your city. Now, if we take a closer look at this rail interchange over here, we once again see that there are trees underneath the railroad, which there shouldn't be any more than there should be underneath the highway roads. So remove them as well. And the way these tracks connect together, it's okay-ish. But again, with a little bit of work, I think this could look so much better. If I use Google Maps and I look at how railroads split into 2 or more tracks where I live, they usually split apart evenly. instead of how they did it here with, you know, one rail just branching off. And with a little bit help from Move It, again, node controller, intersection marking tool, this could look so much better. So let's take this one here, for example. First of all, like I said, we take Move It. If a railroad splits into 2 tracks, they would do so by splitting into 2 tracks evenly. Just like we did with the roads. Let's go back a little bit further. Instead of this one arm branching off, we would have 2 rails splitting apart evenly. And if we straighten these ones out real quick, like so, then we can put the railroad at the center where it belongs. See, and now we have 2 tracks splitting off evenly. And if we take node controller, click the node, straighten it out. One thing we have to do with railroads though is we have to push those a little bit back. Otherwise, these these metal thingies overlap, and we don't want that. If we put it at exactly the right spot, we can make it look like it's just one metal arch with a shared support in the middle. Excellent. Then I think what we need to do is bring these ones a little closer. The secret to having 2 identical sides in a split like this is to have the nodes on exactly the same level and having all the pieces at the same orientation. So I think what we can do is, if we take this tool, we can remove these nodes, give it a little bit more of an gradual descent. Of course, then we need to take node controller again, move this back again a little so they don't overlap, make it look like one metal arch. It's holding up the wires. Excellent. Yeah, it's not really centered, so we could go like so. Yeah, that looks about right. And this train does not know what to do. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. It deleted itself. Excellent. Now that already looks much better than that, in my opinion. The track just splits off into even other tracks. The only thing that is now left is that we have this little part in the middle here that doesn't have these wooden, I forgot its name, but I know they have a name, but we have this section over here that doesn't have any of those. So what we can do is we can take node controller, and if we add in a filler on one of the tracks, this one for instance, as you can see, we already have stripes. Now all there is left to do is we need to find the correct color, which should be some brownish color. That actually looks pretty close. Then we need to shorten them a little bit on the side, like so. And on that side, like so. The width is decent. 0.5, 0.4. Let's put it on 0.4. Step could be a little bit closer together. And we don't have to even change the angle whatsoever. So there, voila. A little bit of work, and we have these fake wooden beams underneath the train tracks in our intersections. You can do the other 4 as well, of course, or the other 3. And if we zoom out a little bit, you don't see any difference whatsoever. An interchange like this looks so much better than an interchange like this. And also, it's much smoother for the trains, even though we seem to have a little bit of an issue. So let's move it, see if we can fix that real quick. Again, you probably want to spend a little bit more time on it, but you know, again, the point is with like 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes of extra effort, this looks so much better than the stuff that they give us. They must spend so much time on these maps. The river looks so realistic, the hills look realistic, so much vegetation. I know they probably have tools to generate this automatically, or at least most of it, and an artist just comes in afterward and fills in the blanks. But still, you could probably make so much more people happy with this method. And it takes, realistically, it takes no time whatsoever. Now, if we follow the interchange that we just corrected to over here, it ends in this weird little squiggly thing with some weird side rails. The good thing is that this actually ends in a square that is connected to over here. So if you want to have quick access to the railroad, you only have to buy 2 squares, this one and this one over here, which is probably not a bad progression of squares. If this is your starting square, this is probably your second, and this being your third, it's probably not that big of a stretch for normal gameplay. So yeah, that is nice that you can have really early access to the rail. Alright, now let's, for the sake of the rest of this map, let's real quickly go to the 81 tile mod and quickly unlock all areas. So if we zoom out, we can see, which was already obvious by the way, but if we zoom out, we can see that this map is without sea access. There is only a river, and usually in previous maps in City Skylines that meant that there would be no shipping access. But on this map and on the other maps in this DLC that I noticed that don't have sea access, there is still shipping access. There is still a shipping lane. So if you open up the shipping menu real quick, which is over here, and we can open up this one, and we take the shipping routes. There it is. There is a shipping lane coming in from the top of the map, from the river, and it goes down to almost all the way to the starting square. The start square is around here, so it stops just short of the start square. Yeah, that is nice to have, but that is also what I meant with the interesting route the railroad takes, because the railroad, as you might remember, is down here, which means that if you want to connect to the railroad, you have to expand down. If you want to connect to the shipping lane, you have to expand up. Both connections are on opposite sides of the start square, so you need to plan ahead if you want to use shipping or rail connections. You'll probably get both anyway at some point, even if you're just playing vanilla tile unlocks, but it will take a while before you have enough tiles unlocked until you get both of them. You'll probably need 4 or 5 tiles before you have shipping access and railroad access. It also means that creating a cargo harbor and connecting it to your cargo rail network will take some work because they are so far apart. But you know, having shipping on a river map is not something I expected. Again, I don't know if this is something they have been doing for a while. I haven't really looked at some of the new maps that came with the previous DLCs. But it's a nice addition nonetheless. So I guess having your connections in a difficult location is better than not having them at all. And the final connection is of course the air connection. There's not much to be said about these. There is an air connection that comes in over here and bends down to the right side of the map and exits over here. But planes fly to your airport no matter where they are on the map. So the only thing that is important for this is that there is a plane connection, and the location of it is not really that important. Next up are the resources, and there is plenty of fertile land, especially around the starting square. There is a lot of it. Forestry and some oil are also around the start square. Ore is a little bit further away, mostly in the hills, but some of those deposits should still be reachable within a couple of tiles. This one, for example, or this one, this little one over here, for example. Fishing is, of course, also possible alongside the entire river and in a couple of lakes that are dotted around the map. I have yet to find a map where there is a body of water without at least one of the types of fish available. So that is no surprise. And with this DLC, actually, the fishing industry is integrated a little more into the industries with some new factories. One new factory, I believe. Game almost crashed there because I tried to open a menu at the same time as an autosave. The seafood factory, which which says unknown expansion, but it is the hotels and resorts, I think. So we have the seafood factory, which is new for this DLC, I think. It takes in fish and oil or plastics, if I'm reading that right. I never know what those icons mean. It is integrated a little bit more into the industries. You'll see also you can now store fish in warehouses, which is a nice change. I haven't tried any of my workshop warehouses yet, if they can now store fish as well, or if they have to be updated. But I guess we'll find out in various Isles pretty quickly. So for people like myself who like playing with the industry stuff, I really like building different types of industry along my map. You should be able to produce all different types of materials, and you should have no problem using the unique factories. So, what are some of the possibilities of this map? Now, I think this map is probably a single city map. And what I mean by that is you probably start building somewhere in or around the starting square, and you will build your city out alongside the river from there on out. It's not like various Isles where we have all these different little islands dotted around the map and mountain ranges that split islands into two, and we have a lot of different settlements dotted around the map. I think this map lends itself best for a big sprawling city which stretches out along the river all the way up there, on both sides probably, with some cool bridges in between, stuff like that. Maybe fan out a little bit alongside the hills into these buildable areas. I think that would be the best approach for this map. Now, there are plenty of resources to use the industry DLC, as we saw in the previous part of this review, but I don't think this is a map that do well focused on industry. I think this map would be better off having a big city with a big financial center, focusing on services, finances, offices, stuff like that. Rail and shipping connections are limited, especially if you don't unlock all the tiles. So there aren't a lot of options for cargo harbors and cargo trains, which would mean that a lot of your cargo traffic, if you do focus on industry, would go over your road network. And since I suspect that your road network will be pretty busy already by the way these highways are laid out, adding the extra strain of a lot of cargo traffic on your roads would probably cause a lot of traffic issues and potential choke points. So I would build a big, nice city center around the river, on or around starting square. I would maybe use some skyscrapers, but not a lot. I think this map is excellent as a European themed map. The vegetation, the colors, the river, the way it looks, the way it's laid out. It makes me think of some of the northern or Scandinavian capitals. I think some European assets would also be cool on this map, like for some of those older buildings like castles or the Rijksmuseum, or something like Big Ben, or stuff like that. And then it would be a big urban sprawl with lots of low and medium density buildings, lots of parks, lots of schools, maybe a big university somewhere, shopping centers everywhere. Of course, this DLC is all about the hotels and the retreats. So we definitely need some of those around. Probably some retreats and some resorts, along the edges, in the hills, in the forests, that use the cabins and combine it with the parks DLC, with the nature reserves to make some cool looking nature resorts, nature retreats. The overall look would probably be something like, one of those Nordic or Scandinavian capitals. They are mostly located around lots of water and have a big urban sprawl. Without a lot of very tall buildings. It's mostly low density, medium density, and spread out across a big area. That is what I would be building on this map. And I must say, Doing this review and envisioning what I would build on this map, it actually has me excited to play this map if it weren't for the fact that I just continued various isles, and having 2 cities at the same time for somebody who only has time to record in the weekends is probably not the best idea. I would be eager to start a new city on this map. I think I could make a pretty cool looking European city on this map. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ever going to build on this map, since various isles will probably be the last city I will ever build in City Skylines 1, or maybe sometime in the future we come back and revisit City Skylines 1 after we've done a couple of maps on City Skylines 2. You never know, but various isles will probably be the last city I build for a while, at least in City Skylines 1, before we move on to Cities Skylines 2. Alright, and with that said, every review needs some sort of score at the end, some sort of, conclusion. So let's summarize what we found and list some of the things that we think are pros and cons for this map. So let's start with the pros. The map looks absolutely beautiful. The river is very realistic looking. I really like how it flows. I really like the hills down the sides. It really feels like a river valley somewhere in Europe. So yeah, that is a big plus. Also, there is lots of buildable lands in the 80%, it said on the statistics. I doubt that a little bit. I think it's more like 50 to 60% you would use down here in the middle. But yeah, either way, it is a lot of buildable area that you can use. And of course, having all 4 types of connections, even though this is a river map and not a sea map, not a seashore map, is a nice big plus. And maybe I would add the little bit more effort into the interchanges as a plus, but it's also a negative, I think, but we'll get to that later. But for now, yeah, I think this is an excellent map, pretty good looking with a very decent starting tile. You have some options, but you do need to make some choices. Some of the cons are, the connections in different areas, railroad on this side, shipping on this side. So you need to be able to plan ahead and know what you're doing before you want to commit to a city. That can be a little bit tricky. I feel like this map is only suited for one type of city, the big sprawling city like I mentioned. Maybe you could do a dual city one, like one here at the top and one here at the bottom. But I think mostly this is going to be a map where you have one big city. And despite the nice landscape and obvious time spent on creating this map, I think some of the connections could be a little bit better. You could spend a little bit more time on things like the road connection, the trees underneath the road, the railroad connection, the trees underneath the railroad, stuff like that. I mean, take an hour longer and you have a map that is 10 times better. So, in conclusion, all in all, I think this map is pretty cool to build on. Though because of the connections to the outside world, how they are implemented, I don't think it's a beginner-friendly map. I think you need to be a little bit more experienced to start building on this map. This would probably not be your first or your second map. Also, this DLC is all about the hotels and resorts or retreats, I'm not sure. And I don't think this is a decent map to build a lot of hotels on. Yeah, of course, we have the river. But if I think of hotels, I think of maybe a desert map like Las Vegas, or, something along the beach with lots of hotels alongside a shoreline, which both are present in the new maps for this new DLC. So they did accommodate for that. This one lends itself maybe a little bit more to nature resorts, nature retreats. So I could see that being a thing on this map. But yeah, overall, this map doesn't scream hotels and retreats to me, which is what this DLC is all about. Now, would I play on this map if I was in the market for a new map? Yes, definitely. I can see myself building a big European city alongside the very nice looking river and utilize some of the gameplay elements that City Skylines has to offer. But yeah, I would definitely build on this map as something different than what I would normally do. As I said, normally I build on, you know, big, bright ocean maps with islands and lots of seaside connections. So yeah, I think this would be a nice map for me to build on. Overall, I would give this map a score of 7.5 out of 10, which for a first map review isn't that bad actually. So I hope you all enjoyed this map review. As I said, this is something completely new for me and I actually had fun writing the script, looking at a map in some more detail than I normally do, and creating this video in general. If you like this video, maybe you will also like my other City Skylines videos. We are currently building in Varus Isles, a island map in the tropics, where we are building our final city before leading up to the release of City Skylines 2. If you enjoyed this video as well, please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please leave a comment with your opinions both on this map and this review. I'm interested to see what you think about this map. Would you play on it? And what did you think of my review? Did I miss something? Did I include something that wasn't useful at all? Please let me know. I'm always up for improving my videos. But with that being said, this has been everything for today. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye!